the KELOLAND Digital Desk. I'm meteorologist Scot Mundt. It is Monday, September 22nd, and this is another edition of Weather or Not. Coming up on today's show, we have some rain numbers that I want to show you, showing the wettest Septembers that we do have on record for parts of central and north central South Dakota. Pierre and Mobridge have been receiving heavy rainfall for much of this month. We'll take a look at some of those numbers coming up. Of course, our weather pattern over the next 2 weeks gets maybe a little more interesting as we get into maybe that first full weekend of October, with some changes trying to move through. Also talk about that snow trend, as we've been talking about that since the tail end of August. I'll bring you some of those numbers coming up here too, and what kind of pattern has been showing up with that. We do have a chance at a couple of scattered showers, thunderstorms late this afternoon and evening in western South Dakota. You do see a couple of those here on Futurecast, and there may be a renegade shower or two that shows up in and around the Sioux Falls area. If that happens, I think that may happen, could happen around 7 o'clock this evening. To see that renegade shower, thunder shower, otherwise on Futurecast, you do see the best chance to see the rain will be across western and southwestern South Dakota. That'll take us right into the evening hours, and even during the early part of tonight, we'll have a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms holding across the west and southwest. There is that chance for severe weather. This takes us into southeastern South Dakota. I think a lot of this will eventually show up in the eastern Nebraska and western Iowa. We'll see how far north those thunderstorms do grow. And let's go ahead and take this over to the west, because if we do get a stray thunderstorm here across southwestern South Dakota, maybe from Pine Ridge over toward Martin, that runs a marginal risk for severe weather. So we're still having that chance for severe thunderstorms as we get into the last week and a half of September. Up to 81 today for a high in Sioux Falls, 73 Watertown, 77 in Huron and Aberdeen, 80 in Pierre. And as clouds continue to build this afternoon, western South Dakota, Rapid City will have a high at around 75. We'll watch for showers, thunderstorms into the early part of tonight in western and southwestern South Dakota. Otherwise, dry skies central into northern KELOLAND as temperatures tonight fall to the low to middle 50s. Stay with us. We'll talk about those September rain numbers coming up. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Weather or Not. Let's go ahead and concentrate on some of these rain numbers that we have been receiving for the month of September. And as Brian Karstens liked to say, it's a story of the haves and the have-nots, depending on where you live. As we do take a look at this map, this is a look at our monthly rainfall so far. Now, this only takes us through yesterday. Does not take into account maybe that isolated shower, thunderstorm that Sioux Falls received during the overnight hours, because that happened at, I believe it was 2:30 to 3 in the morning. So those numbers are not included, but I think officially it came in around 5, maybe 0.08 of an inch, so it wasn't like we received a lot of rainfall anyway. But as we do take a look at these numbers, north central South Dakota really stands out. 6.5 inches of rainfall for Mobridge, 4 3/4 in Pierre, and then as you move into southeastern South Dakota and Sioux Falls, 0.14 of an inch of rainfall for the month so far. And unless we get that renegade isolated shower, thunder shower over the city of Sioux Falls, we may stay there at, if you add in whatever fell last night, we're still less than 1/4 of an inch. But I think this next graphic that I have, is it the next one that highlights those areas? Nope, not yet, but we'll get to it. Here's our departure from our monthly average. You can see we're almost 5.5 inches above in Mobridge, 3.5 above in Pierre, and then those numbers are below in eastern and southeastern South Dakota. Mitchell's close to an inch below, and Sioux Falls is approaching 2 inches below their average so far this month. So we can use some of that rainfall in southeastern South Dakota, but I don't think we'll see it anytime soon. Here's a look at the wettest Septembers in Mobridge and Pierre, and I went ahead and circled this year as we are at our wettest in Mobridge by about, maybe approaching 2 inches above The second wettest now in 1977, where they had 4 2/3 of an inch. In Pierre, you see that chart there on the right, second wettest on record for September in Pierre at 4 3/4 of an inch. And you see the wettest was in 1996, just shy of 7 inches. And then it changes in southeastern South Dakota. Labeled it, of course, as being dry. And again, this does not take into account what fell during the early morning hours. But since yesterday, coming in at our second driest in Sioux Falls, right behind, guess what? Last year, 2024, only 0.04 of an inch of rainfall fell last September. So we do have a lot of those numbers, as you can see, with our top 5 for not only wettest, but driest in parts of KELOLAND. Wettest showing up in central, north central South Dakota, and the driest into, we'll say, parts of southeastern South Dakota, in and around the Sioux Falls area. Let's go ahead and break it down per day. Here's a look at Sioux Falls September rain. Not many days to show here, as it's rained a measurable rain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 days worth of measurable rain, and it's staying less than 0.15 of an inch. So, the rain that we have received has been very, very light in and around the Sioux Falls area. And here's a look at Mobridge, 2 days setting records for daily rainfall. That happened on back-to-back days, too, on the 13th and on the 14th of September. And then you see last week, it rained just about every day until you hit Saturday. We had measurable rain, 1 1/3 on the 14th. That set a record. And then about 1 1/4 there on Wednesday of last week, over 1 inch again on Thursday. That was that slow-moving low-pressure system that moved through the area to give us our rains from last week. And here's a look at Pierre. 2 days setting records. It happened on the 14th and the 17th. The 17th, able to bring in 2.5 inches of rainfall, a little bit more than that, to set a record. So we've had the heavy rains in central and north central South Dakota as, again, this slow-moving area of low pressure moved through last week. Here's a look at what you can expect for the rest of this week. And I really think that central and the northern half of South Dakota will stay dry. So we'll have dry conditions into those areas that have been receiving a lot of rainfall during this month. We'll have that isolated chance for something maybe this evening in southeastern KELOLAND, while the best bet to get wet will be found across western and southwestern South Dakota. And that was a look at Futurecast. So it takes us out to Wednesday. And by the time we do get into Wednesday and beyond, going into the weekend, we'll have our dry conditions. And we'll talk more about our weather pattern coming up. You're watching the latest edition of Weather or Not. Here we go with our weather pattern. We know that it's been warm. Seems like for the past several weeks. I know we've had a couple of hiccups here and there. Cloud cover, some rain, knocking our temperatures down. But for a majority of these days, we've had above average temperatures. And that trend will continue as we go through the rest of this week and right into this coming weekend. As we do take a look at our weather pattern here for you, we have to think that sooner or later it's just going to start swinging the other direction. I know that Brian Karstens likes to describe it as a pendulum. Sooner or later we have these above average temperatures, and then you know that not lurking that far away should be below average air. And we're starting to see signs of that as we get into maybe that first week to maybe week and a half of October. So that is something worth watching, something worth mentioning as well. So as we do take a look at it, the 500 millibar pattern. Now, a couple of things may stand out to you. We have low pressure that meanders around the southwestern part of the United States. It doesn't go anywhere. But we've also have a couple of systems trying to move through southern Canada that will help bring in some cooler temperatures by the time we do get into that first weekend of October. So give it about a week and a half, and it will start to change. But before then, what you see is what you get. Dry conditions, above average temperatures. Now, we'll see if we get any question marks. Now, what I mean by a question mark is if we get any tropical systems to eventually try to make their way across maybe the eastern part of the United States. I don't see anything going into the Gulf just yet. But if we do get a couple of tropical systems that can slow down our weather, that can change, of course, our weather pattern from what you see here. But right now, I really don't see anything like that happening anytime soon. But just keep that in the back of your mind, because then things may start to change. But before then, we'll stay dry and we'll probably stay warm. Here's our pattern going into this coming weekend. See that area of high pressure to our south? That will help us stay warm and dry for this coming weekend. There's that low pressure system that I talked about across the southwestern United States. It doesn't do too much to enhance our weather. And then as we do get into the first couple of days of October, let's go ahead and change that view, because we have a storm system here into southern Canada. What will that do? That will move to the east, eventually to the southeast, and that should drag down some cooler air for that first full weekend of October. Just how cool? Well, that still remains to be seen, but we are getting signs that we will have cooler than average temperatures by the time we do get into that time of the year, that first weekend of October. Those numbers may start to change, starting to trend a little bit cooler than average. We'll talk about this snow trend coming up next. Stay with us. You're watching the latest edition of Weather or Not. I always like starting this segment with that sound effect. The crowd booing at me. Just don't throw anything at me. Well, let's see what is going on with our snow trend. We're going to bring up this webpage for you. We've been showing this for the past several weeks, too. As we take a closer look at this again is taking in model data, 100 different members of the European. It's called an ensemble. And it shows each member as to when we may get measurable snow. And this is for the Sioux Falls area. So we'll continue to follow this. And I want to break it down into the time of year, too. So I broke it down into the 10th, the 20th, and the 30th of October, and to when we can possibly start to see maybe some measurable snow by that time of year. So that is something that I have right here as we'll bring up our weather graphics machine. This is the latest that I've had, and I have a tally of this for, I think, 5, maybe 6 days total that I'll get to in just a bit. But through the 10th, it's now showing 0 members trying to bring in measurable snow for Sioux Falls. Then it goes up to 7 out of 100 and 22 out of 100. So just think of it, as that percentage. 0% chance that we will get measurable snow through the 10th, and it goes up to maybe 7% and then 22% by the end of the month. But did you see what's going on in Rapid City? We'll say that's an 18% chance to get measurable snow by the 10th. Then it goes up to 51, and then it goes up to 78 by the 30th of October. In fact, let me go back to that webpage, and I'll bring in Rapid City, okay? So there's Rapid City, and notice how we have a lot more of those members suggesting that, yes, we can get measurable snow as we go out 45 days. So this is a 45-day forecast as to when we can get some of that measurable snow into the area. I mentioned before, too, that I've been following this, been writing it down. I have it in my laptop here in an Excel format as I'm following this every day, tallying up these numbers as to when we could get our first measurable snow. So you see, since the 16th, that brings us it's about a week of numbers here. It's averaging out to, 1% chance we'll get measurable snow there by the 10th of October. And then by the 20th, it comes in at about 9% for Sioux Falls, and then we're looking at maybe 27% chance by the time we get into the 30th. And that's just an average over the past 7 days. But you may also notice that the trend there, it's getting less, isn't it? The 30th, we went from 29 to 22. We even have a 30 in here. On the 19th of September, 30 members were pointing at measurable snow. And here's Rapid City on the right. And as you look at those numbers there as an average, again, think of it about maybe 28% chance of getting measurable snow by the 10th, 57% by the 20th, and then it's over 80% chance to get something by the 30th. And that's, typical, I would say, of western South Dakota to bring in those higher snow chances. And by the 30th, it's been as high as 88. That was from yesterday. And then it's cut back to maybe 78. So it's always an interesting thing to follow, see what kind of trend we can pick up on as to when it's thinking of bringing in the first measurable snow. So we'll continue to follow that. I'll continue to write down those numbers as I do see them moving through the area. I'm looking at a couple. Let's go ahead and bring up this. Just looking at a couple of things behind the scenes as to how I want to go about and talk about this snow trend. So there's our snow depth. Nothing to really show. So then let's go out to the next 14 days. It's trying to fill it into Wyoming, Colorado, to bring in some snow chances here over the next 2 weeks. Oh, did you see this? Right here. Maybe northern Minnesota can get in on some of that. Let me go ahead and open up the graphic here, and I'll try to bring in a time on that too. So let's go ahead and change our view just so I could see it a little bit better. This will make it a little bit bigger on the screen. Let's go ahead and bring that out. There it is, right there. So that's at the tail end of that 14-day forecast. So that takes it out to about the 5th or the 6th of October, trying to bring in that snow chance near Fargo and into maybe, we'll say the northern half of Minnesota. So that's something a little different as compared to what we've had, it seems like, over the past week, as we've been showing these outlooks over the past couple of weeks, actually, as we've been showing some of these outlooks. Our weather pattern that we've been following through the summer is this, and I'll continue to use this as an example. I mentioned that first weekend of October that temperatures are expected to cool. Just how much cooler will we get? Still out for debate, but it does look like we will have below average temperatures try to return during that time, and that lines up to this 40 to 45-day cycle when we've had these colder outbreaks that have come in. I'm using Aberdeen as an example. June 4th, July 17th, August 25th, when we had those numbers fall to the 30s and 40s. And the cycle there's been anywhere from 39 to 45 days. So I went ahead and rounded it, 40 to 45-day cycle. So dating back since August 25th, that will take us out to maybe August 4th or October 4th or 9th when we look at that cycle from the end of August and what we've been looking at through the summer. So here's our pattern in the meantime. Those first couple of days of October, wants to bring in this warm weather, well above average temperatures. You can see that on the graphic too. Temperatures are expected to be well above. What you see is what you get. It's just a matter of how much above do we get before this colder air arrives. And I think we'll continue with dry skies too, or mostly dry conditions, much like what we'll have this week. So we'll probably end the month on the dry side. We'll see what happens as we get into that first weekend of October. But the model's already thinking that, we'll bring in a push of some colder air. But again, the big question is, how much colder will it be compared to average? So that's, at least the model trend is still trying to pick up on some of that information, that it will actually kind of fit that pattern or that cycle of 40 to 45 days of bringing in this colder air. It's just a matter of how cold. And we always say that the models really have a hard time on picking up on some of the cold air that comes in as they are looking at a forecast. So it's something that we will continue to follow, of course. We've been following it, seems like, every day on whether or not. It's a good forum to bring something like that in. And again, if you have any questions, go ahead and email me, smundt@keloland.com. You could always email Brian Karstens at bkarstens@keloland.com if you have any questions, comments, concerns, what have you, about this program. We'd love to get some of your feedback as to what you may like to see in future editions of Whether or Not. So that will take us for this latest edition of Whether or Not. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.